to show people, you know, I think you've probably already heard a little bit about the lure. It's flat side, square lip, rattles, you know, it's a 2 to 5 diver. Those things, in my opinion, some of them are the same as other square lip baits. Some of them are a little bit different. You don't see a flat sider that rattles very often. There have been some, one here and there. Those were part of the design criteria. I didn't actually come up with the idea for this lure. The concept I was given. And Wes decided he wanted to do a hard bait. I'm an engineer. I do, you know, lure designs. It's about my 19th independent contract lure design. I've done several companies that are here today, and that's not a problem between us because I do my part and they do theirs. I'm not an employee. So I got a list of things that they wanted out of this, and then I got with him and we narrowed it down. I told him some of the things that you could do and couldn't do, and the bottom line is they want a different. They didn't want someone else's 1.5. They want a square lip that's, you know, in that market, but definitely different, one way or another. And that's a challenge.
How is it different?
Well,
like why is an angler going to say, I'm going to get an Echo 175?
Here's why they'll eventually. Here's what will cause the big deal. First of all, there's going to be a lot on track because we have heavy following in the rattle trap business. Second, it's a rattling crankbait with the look of the square lip mark for the square lip market and so forth. And it's not just a rattle. There's a few of them out there with a low frequency sound, just like a one knot. This one has multiple rattles.
Oh yeah, different sizes too.
Yeah, there's 3 different sizes of rattles. Those are the bigger ones are low frequency sound. You know, a lower thought. The smaller they are, all the way down to pen size, would be like real high frequency sound if you were to really boil it down to technical stuff. And there's really no other way to cause that in a lure except if you put something electronic with a battery and all that stuff. But to do that, we needed different chambers, all different ones, not let them get mixed up. And in effect, we had this big one, this one on top, the high one. That's the important one. I'll tell you why. Almost every 1.5 or every square lip crankbait has a forward weight, diving weight, and it has a belly weight.
Right.
If it wasn't made that way, when you cast it, it wouldn't sit in the water like this. You know, if you only had one of those, it'd sit like that. You know, I don't want to buy a lure that sits like that. I don't want to buy one like that. So all of them have this belly weight. All of them also have a diving weight in the front.
Okay.
If you took them all apart, they all look like that. But none of the other ones that I know of have this high middle weight up there. Now, I'll be honest with you, that was kind of an accident. I had to change this weight. It was banging around in a bigger chamber and the weight wouldn't work right. So I started narrowing down the size of that weight. We had to have it for the frequency sound we were wanting. And I finally just made it round like the front ones and put it right there to try it. And the first time I threw that lure, I saw the difference the very first time I threw that version of it. You know, the weight between these versions is a prototype addition to the mold. And what happens with the belly weight is when you start to retrieve the lure, it rotates on the weight. Right. When it dives a little bit, well, then it picks this front weight as its rotation axis. Can you see that?
Yeah, so it'll transition from here to here.
Yes, sir.
So you'll get
all
a sound.
Of them do that.
You'll get a sound, the complete dive, the complete retrieve.
Yes, sir. When you're a long way from the boat, it uses that belly weight to start moving.
Right.
And then it kind of, the lip will change the angle of the lure, and it'll start using that front weight to rotate as an axis of rotation. Okay. But this one weight right here that's in the middle at the top confuses that kind of transfer. And so you get a very kind of erratic, it starts using all 3 axi to move.
So it'll hunt.
Oh, yeah, it's more than hunting. You know, a hunting lure does like this, and then it goes, a bigger one.
Right.
It's always moving back and forth, and then it's just bigger back and forth. It's fairly predictable still, really. I mean, it's great to have a hunting bait, but this one's even different than that.
Truly random.
Really random. It really is. And And when it switches, because you change your rod tip or something, and you're this far or that far from the boat, and the angle of the line to the lure is different.
Changing the knocker you're using.
Yeah, and it not only changes the bait, does some sudden changes, which all trigger strikes. You know, any kind of sudden change in a lure or during retrieve trigger strikes. But you really don't have to do anything but chunk it and wind it. You know, it's still an idiot bait. I mean, the rattle trap's long been called an idiot bait. We say you're an idiot if you're not using one because they catch so many fish, but this bait's still in line with the ease of use of a rattle trap. And I mean, you know as well as I do, being a fisherman, that if you fish a 1.5 or 2.5 crankbait or that type of square lip, you gotta know a little bit about it. I mean, it's not the easiest bait in the world to use it. Yeah, everybody can chunk and wind one, but having it move right and change and different, it requires a little bit of work from you. Not too much of that with this bait. As a matter of fact, I recommend highly to even expert users that they don't vary the retrieve on this bait. Let it do its own thing.
Let it do its own thing.
And it's a medium to slow retrieve that's best, because it is so radical that it's moving a lot more than you think. It's not moving linear all the distance it's moving, but if you add up all the movements it's making, you're really moving it faster than you think with a medium retrieve. It's moving all over. So if you start reeling it real fast, you're taking away from some of what it'll do. It's not it's a 6.4 retrieve, middle to slow retrieve.
So 5-to-1 gear ratio.
I wouldn't use it unless you're just a real fast fisherman and can't slow down any other way. So there's a lot of those.
Mid-speed reel.
Yeah, 6-to-1, 6-4-to-1.
What kind of line do you recommend?
I found 14-pound fluorocarbon of any premium brand to be the ultimate. I've used 17 on it because I live on Sam River Lake and fish Toledo Bend a lot,
so
and
heavier cover,
sometimes we just gotta have it.
Yeah.
Fish too. I mean, you know, big fish turning with sharp hooks, and the hooks exposed all over the place, and I just tend to use a little bit heavier line than most anyone would. But I think a lot of people use a little bit heavier line on square crankbaits sometimes for ripping and things like that.
Yep, so dive depth?
2 to 5 feet. There's another little feature on the lure that just is happenstance. It dives flat. As opposed to, a lot of these baits get to depth quick and stay at depth. This bait gets to depth slower but stays flat. Makes an incredibly good grass lure because the lip doesn't go digging into the grass. The bait hits the grass kind of flat. And I didn't notice that till we were testing. And I mean, I very rarely am pulling wads of grass off of it. You just don't have to do it much. I mean, also, if you cast this lure a long ways and you hold your rod tip like this and you reel, it's only gonna run about 1.5 to 2 foot deep the whole way to the boat, because you never get it using the other, and just stay on that belly weight rotation exercise. So it's really versatile. You can use it, you can put your rod tip on the water, it'll run 4 foot, 4.5 foot. But if you hold your rod tip up, because you're on kind of sort of a wake bait or just under the water, it won't wake, it won't bulge, it won't do that. But it'll run 1.5 foot under the water easily. So if your grass is that far under, or your cover, boat dock stuff, whatever, you just raise your rod tip up and the bait comes back up, goes back down. It's really effective.
So you can vary the depth depending on how you hold the rod and how you retrieve.
Yes, and one of the reasons that, besides the obvious, that it takes up space on the front of my boat every time I go, and I'm a fishing guide and tournament fisherman, and I keep it rigged all the time for that, if nothing else. I mean, if I encounter cover that's 1.5 to 4 feet, I don't have to change lures. Spinnerbait's about the only bait you can do that with. Maybe a swim jig. You surely can't find many crankbaits that are that predictable, where you can keep them at 1.5 to 2 foot, or at 3 foot or 4 foot just by learning the rod or whatever. It was a year in R&D, literally, and another 6 months in getting production and our paint. We have laser etched paint.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's new for the traditional rattle trap. And without this flat side, we couldn't do it. So that was a design criteria. They wanted to use the laser etched painting. What that is an enhanced photograph. That's a photograph of a perch. And then our head of operations is also a graphics artist, and what she did is pop these features that are, like that's a photograph of a perch, and in that picture there was some blue vertical lines, you know, hazy on the fish, and the fin was prominent, and perhaps some of this area and so forth, the colors. So her not even really being that much of a fisherman, with our instruction and pro staff input, she brought out the colors and the features that we should bring those out, and she's real good at that. So on these other laser etched, you know, here's a different style, or maybe that one's from Toledo Bend, that one's from, you know, Gunnersville. Maybe these pictures are perched from certain lakes. Well, she brings out that particular style, so people's brim look different, and the triggers on the fish are, you know, we think that there are certain things when we can bring that out. The chartreuse stripe, the blue back, things like that. The crawfish, I actually have a portfolio of crawfish pictures myself at my house. I mean, it's part of what I do. And they're from all these different lakes, even different major parts of our lakes, because they're so big. I'll go in Caney Creek or in Beach Basin or somewhere and turn rocks over till I find a crawfish and take a picture of it. They're all in my computer. Really? And yeah, like Caney Creek, Santa Maria Lake, the crawfish look like this. I mean, that's just what they look like. They look like Louisiana red
All
crawfish.
year round? No.
Most of the year.
Most of the year.
In the summer, I promise you, they look just like that. You won't find any part of them that's not red-orange. They're all the same color. Maybe a little black, you know. But that's not from finding them in live wells, from catching them. You know, I've seen them in live well too, but I've got pictures of them. You get out of that area, it's a kind of a muddy bottom, generally speaking, clay bottom. That's just the color of them. You go way up north on our lake, and they're darker colors, and they're mixed. And some of them have blue, some of them have green, you know. And so, you know, we look at that kind of stuff. Anyone in the bait business that doesn't should, you know.
They should be in the bait business if they're not.
They should be looking at the forage up close.
Yeah.
And with this picture taking and enhancing, you know, we can take a picture of the perch that's that long, cut it down to size with the software, pop the features we want, and then just print it directly to the lure. This is printed directly to the lure. There's a carrier through the laser, and the fish pictures are printed on the lures like mailing labels, you know. And they're just extremely versatile way to get a real good finish. It's highly durable too, man. The coating we put on these lures, it's relatively new. It's a two-part coating. In other words, it's a very thin epoxy, basically. And these have been on here for like 9 months. I'm serious. The only ones we've replaced in that time are some of these electroplates. You know, they don't last quite. Yeah. But these others, man, I can't even hardly find much flaw in them. That, you know, some of the fins have a little beat up on them, but I mean, generally.
But I mean, if they'll last
9 months of carrying them around in a truck on a ring, banging together. I mean, they're not going to go apart in your tackle box.
So they'll last
real good. Hello. I've got one of these that's got over 100 fish caught on it by now, and it was only in the 50s probably when you could start really seeing teeth marks on the bait. It's not one you're going to show your friends, show how many fish you caught by teeth marks on your lure. I'm telling you, you can't even tell for a while. Very durable.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of thought has gone into the bait overall. A whole lot. And a lot of fishing. You know, the way we get 1,000 hours on a lure is not me going fishing for 1,000 hours.
No.
Or you, 1,000 people an hour, 100 people 10 hours. It's more like that. It's more like 100 people 10 hours because we need feedback as soon as possible. And we got Boyd Duckett and all these guys, Cliff Crochet and Andrew Upshaw and a bunch of others. I mean, our pro staff, local pro staff, is probably as big as they get. I mean, we've got people in every state in the South, and they all got protos, and they all run them, and they all give feedback.
And they love
1 to 10. Man, I'm telling you, a couple of these guys we never knew until this Brian Branum, young man, he sent us some uninterrupted video of 4 and 5 pound fish, 3 he caught one day on Echo. He called us just ecstatic. He's here somewhere. And he's a young guy, and he got involved with us over this day. Sure did. Cool. There's another picture. That's the same thing as Brian again. But a lot of these guys we met sending us information about some sample stuff we sent out. Bobby Barrett's doing great with it out on the West Coast. He's asking for one that long, of course. I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't even make you one. I'm sorry.
That's some really good insight on the Echo 175.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad y'all are here. Thank you. Here to visit with us, and I hope you have a good show and learn a lot.
Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.